People say that isolation changes you. After 10 years perched in a 7x7 tower overlooking the Clearwater National Forest, I can tell you that they're right, but not in the ways you would expect. For decades, I've spent my summers scanning the horizon for smoke columns from a metal and glass box mounted atop a 100-foot tower miles away from civilization. Fire lookouts are a dying breed these days. Satellites, drones, and cameras have replaced most human eyes, but certain remote areas still rely on us. There's something about human intuition that technology hasn't replicated yet. What they don't tell you in training is that fire lookouts see a lot more than just fires. When you're responsible for 300,000 acres of wilderness, with high-powered binoculars in nothing but time, you witness things that nobody was meant to see. These are some of those stories. My third season started normally enough. Late May, when the snow had mostly melted, but before the real fire danger began, I was settling in for another summer of solitude. The helicopter dropped me my supplies off that morning, and I was unpacking when I spotted movement through my binoculars. About 4 miles southwest of my tower, a figure in red was moving along Porter Ridge Trail. Nothing unusual, hikers were common in the area. I noted it in my log as standard procedure and continued organizing my supplies. 2 hours later, I spotted another hiker in blue heading down the same trail from the opposite direction. I watched idly as the two dots moved toward each other, eventually meeting at a small clearing that served as a rest area. Through the binoculars, I could see them talking. The red-jacketed hiker appeared to be a woman with a large backpack, the blue-jacketed one, a man with just a day pack. After about 15 minutes, they parted ways. The man in blue continued north and the woman in red headed south. Or at least, that's what should have happened. But as I tracked them, something felt off. The man's posture had changed. His gait seemed different, heavier somehow, and he now had a large pack. I focused my binoculars more carefully. The woman was nowhere to be seen. Training kicks in during moments like this. I radioed down to the ranger station. Possible incident on Porter Ridge Trail. I reported it giving coordinates. 2 hikers met at approximately 1400 hours. Only one continued. Request welfare check. The rangers said they would send somebody out first thing in the morning. It was already getting dark, and the trail was a good 3-hour hike from the nearest road. I didn't sleep that night. I kept the binoculars trained on that section of forest, even using the night vision scope that we were equipped with for tracking lightning strikes. Nothing moved except nocturnal wildlife. The next day, 2 rangers hiked in. I watched them search the clearing and surrounding area throughout the morning. Around noon, my radio crackled. "Lookout 1, this is Ranger Davis. Come in." "Go ahead, Ranger Davis. Go ahead." We found a hiking pole and what appears to be dried blood on some rocks just off trail near the meeting point. No sign of the hiker or the backpack. We're calling in search and rescue and law enforcement. Keep your eyes open for any movement in this quadrant. For the next week, the forest below me swarmed with search teams and eventually FBI agents. They found more blood and scattered personal items, but never the woman. What they did find hidden beneath a pile of rocks half a mile away was a small cache containing items from 3 different missing hikers from the previous 2 years. 6 weeks later, they arrested a man in Spokane. He had been using credit cards belonging to the missing woman. In his storage unit, they found her backpack along with belongings from 5 other people who had disappeared in national forests across the Northwest over the past 3 years. The case made national news briefly. The papers called him the Trail Killer. He eventually confessed to 8 murders, all in wilderness areas, all careful ambushes of solo hikers in isolated locations. What they didn't report was how he was caught. A fire lookout, somebody whose job was to watch for smoke, had instead witnessed a killer at work. I testified at his trial, but they never made public that I had seen the encounter, and for safety reasons I was grateful for that. It was the fall of my 4th year. The fire season was winding down, but I had agreed to stand an extra month to monitor a controlled burn project. The aspen leaves had turned gold and the air had that crisp edge that signaled winter's approach. Standard procedure for fire lookouts is to note any human activity in the forest during high-risk periods. I had been tracking a group of 4 hunters for 2 days as they moved through a remote section about 6 miles northeast of my tower. Legal hunting season had just begun, and their orange vests made them easy to spot from a distance. On the 3rd morning, I noted that they had split into 2 pairs. Nothing unusual, standard hunting practice. The first pair headed north along a game trail while the other 2 moved east toward Blacktail Creek. I made periodic checks on both groups throughout the morning. Around 2 p.m. I saw a muzzle flash from the eastern pair's location, followed by the distant pop of a rifle shot a moment later. A successful hunt, I presumed. I watched as they appeared to field dress something, though the distance and tree cover made details impossible to discern. By 4 p.m., as shadows lengthened, both hunting pairs converged again at their camp. I did one final sweep of the area before darkness fell, noting nothing unusual. The next morning I couldn't locate the hunters. Their camp seemed abandoned. I assumed that they had packed out early, perhaps having gotten what they came for. I made a note and moved on to my regular fire monitoring duties. 3 days later, my radio came alive with urgent chatter. A search and rescue operation was being mobilized. 2 hunters had emerged from the wilderness, reporting that their companions were missing. Last coordinates were near Blacktail Creek. The ranger coordinator was saying they separated 2 days ago and never returned to camp. My blood ran cold. I broke in on the channel. "Lookout 1 here." I had visual on that hunting party 3 days ago. Observed what happened to be a successful hunt near Blacktail Creek. All 4 hunters had returned to camp by nightfall. A long pause followed. "Lookout 1, please confirm. You witnessed all 4 hunters at camp after the split?" "Affirmative. 2 pairs separated in the morning. Both returned by dusk." Another pause. That contradicts the survivors' report. They claim they waited overnight before hiking out to report that their friends were missing. I reviewed my detailed logbook with the search coordinator. The timestamps, locations, and movements that I had recorded didn't match what these survivors had reported. Law enforcement was brought in. The 2 survivors were separated and questioned, and their stories fell apart within hours. The truth emerged in pieces. What I had witnessed wasn't a deer hunt. The muzzle flash that I saw was one hunter shooting another over a dispute. His partner was killed trying to intervene. The killers had returned to camp, packed up before dawn, and fabricated the story about their friends getting lost. When investigators searched the area that I directed them to, they found 2 shallow graves. Without my observations from the tower, the murders might have been written off as a wilderness mishap. 2 hunters lost, presumed dead or missing. The prosecuting attorney later told me that my fire tower log, with its timestamps and coordinates, had been the main evidence that they had used against the other hunters. My 60s then brought the case that still haunts me the most. A family of 4 had been camping at Eagle Lake about 5 miles west of my tower, a beautiful spot very popular with families. The parents had reported their 8-year-old son missing around 11 a.m. He had apparently wandered off while they were breaking down camp. By noon, my tower was serving as a coordination point for these search efforts due to our radio equipment and vantage point. I had been asked to direct my full attention to the area, tracking search teams and watching for any sign of the boy. From my elevation, I could see the lake and surrounding forest. 12 search teams were methodically combing the area in a standard grid pattern. 2 boats patrolled the lake shore. A helicopter was en route from Missoula at 3:48 p.m. I spotted something off. About a mile north of the lake, Well away from where these search teams were concentrating, I caught a flash of movement that didn't match the pattern of other searchers. Through my binoculars, I saw what appeared to be an adult figure moving quickly through the forest, holding on to something. I radioed in immediately. Possible sighting 1 mile north of the lake, moving northeast. Adult figure carrying something child-sized. 2 search teams were redirected to intercept. I kept my binoculars fixed on the figure, directing the teams via radio. Subject moving faster now, crossing the dry creek bed, heading toward the old logging road. The search teams closed in. Through my binoculars, I watched as they intercepted the figure, a man carrying a bundled tarp. The radio crackled with urgent voices and then went silent. 20 minutes later, Lookout 1, child recovered, alive, suspect in custody. The full story emerged that evening. The man that they had caught was a previously convicted offender who had been working as a campground host under a false identity. He had been watching the family and waiting for an opportunity. When the parents were distracted with packing, he lured the boy away with his stories about seeing a little bear cub. His plan had been to take the child to a prepared location deep in the forest. A small cabin off the old logging road that investigators later found stocked with food, restraints, and other items that I don't care to describe. If the boy had made it to that cabin, search teams might have never found him. The area was outside of the standard search radius, in terrain that would have masked any cries for help. What haunts me isn't just the evil I witnessed, but how easily it might have succeeded. If I hadn't happened to be scanning that particular section at that exact moment, if the angle of sunlight hadn't caught my attention, if I had been focusing anywhere else as was originally planned. The boy's parents came to my tower later that summer, just thanking me for what I had done. I didn't tell them how close it had been, how many nightmares I had had since. Instead, I showed their other child, a wide-eyed 6-year-old girl, how to use the firefinder to pinpoint locations in the forest below. And for that short moment, it helped me take my mind off of things. The man is now serving 3 consecutive life sentences. It should be more. My job came with protocols for all sorts of emergencies: fires, lost hikers, injured climbers, and so on. What it didn't prepare me for was becoming the eyes for a federal manhunt. The summer of my 7th season on the job, 2 inmates had escaped from the state penitentiary about 80 miles south of my forest. The FBI believed that they had fled north into the wilderness with help from outside sources. For 3 days, my normal fire-spotting duties were supplemented with a scanning for unusual human movement. On day 4, I noticed something at the eastern edge of my viewpoint. A vehicle unusual because it was on a maintenance road that was supposed to be closed to the public. Through my binoculars, I could make out a dark green SUV parked where the road ended at a trailhead. I reported it and was told to monitor but not approach. Obviously, I had no intention of leaving my tower, but the instruction reflected the tension of the situation. Hours passed by, and as sunset approached, I spotted movement near the vehicle. 2 men emerged from the forest, moving with an urgency that seemed suspicious even from miles away. They appeared to be loading something heavy into the back of the SUV. I radioed it in, providing coordinates and a description. The response was immediate. Multiple agencies were converging on the location from different access points. They were still 30 to 45 minutes out at a minimum. I was asked to maintain observation and report any updates. Things escalated quickly. A 3rd person appeared, a woman who had apparently been waiting in the driver's seat. The men got in, and the SUV began moving back down the maintenance road. Vehicle on the move, I reported, heading south. What followed was the most surreal hour of my lookout career. From my position, I could track the vehicle's dust cloud as it navigated the winding forest road. I became the eyes for a pursuit that was still assembling, relaying turns and estimated speeds to officers racing to intercept. They've turned west onto the old logging road, moving very quickly. The dust suggests that they may have missed the curve near Miller Creek. Vehicle stopped briefly. It's moving again now, slower now, possibly damaged. The FBI later told me that my real-time narration was being relayed to over 30 law enforcement vehicles converging from different locations. My vantage point allowed them to set up roadblocks at optimal spots, effectively creating a net that tightened around the fugitives. The SUV eventually attempted to use a dry creek bed as an off-road escape, something visible to me but not to those on the ground. My warning allowed officers to change their positions, and the fugitives drove right into a waiting roadblock. The 2 escaped inmates were captured, along with a woman who was the sister of one of them, and the SUV authorities found weapons, stolen cash, and forged documents for crossing into Canada. After the suspects had been detained, one of the FBI agents on the ground came up to me to thank me. He explained that the fugitives had been hiding in a remote cabin in the forest, and what I had seen them loading into the SUV was their supplies for the next phase of their escape. If they had made it out of the forest before law enforcement had consolidated their positions, they might have disappeared completely. "You ever consider a career change?" he asked, only half joking. "We could use somebody with your observation skills on the squad." I told him that I preferred the company of trees and wildlife to fugitives, but I thanked him again for the opportunity. Not all of the stories that I have from my job involved crimes in progress. Sometimes the horror of it all was more subtle and more personal. It was late August and the summer had been brutally hot, with numerous lightning-caused fires keeping me constantly vigilant. I was exhausted, running on too little sleep and too much coffee. Around sunset, I spotted a lone hiker on the trail that led directly to my tower. This wasn't entirely unusual. Some hikers made fire lookout towers their destination, hoping to chat with the occupant or simply enjoy the view. But official visiting hours had ended and the trail was a challenging 3-hour climb even in the daylight. I radioed down to the ranger station to check if anybody had registered for an overnight hike to the lookout. They confirmed that nobody had, but suggested it might be a day hiker who had lost track of time. They advised me to lock my trapdoor as a precaution and said that they would send somebody to check at first light if I was concerned. As darkness fell, I watched the hiker's headlamps slowly zigzagging up the switchbacks towards my tower. Standard protocol was to assist any hikers in distress, but also to maintain security, especially after hours. I decided to hail the hiker over my external speaker once they got closer. "Hey there, the lookout tower is closed to visitors after sunset. Can I help you with something?" The headlamp stopped moving. After a long pause, a voice called back, "Lane, is that you up there?" A chill ran through me. The voice was familiar, but I couldn't immediately place it. "Who's asking?" I responded, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's me, Vince. Vince Carraway from Durango." My blood went cold. Vincent had been my neighbor in Colorado 6 years and several hundred miles away from where I now stood. We had been close friends but had a falling out that ended up pretty badly, like very badly. I had to file a restraining order against him and it was still active as far as I knew. "You need to turn around and head back down," I said firmly. "The ranger station has been notified of your presence." A laugh floated up from the darkness. "No, they haven't, Lane. I checked in with them this morning. Tell them that I was your cousin, coming for a surprise visit." They gave me detailed directions. My hand shook as I reached for the radio, but I hesitated. If what he said was true, the night staff might not realize that something was wrong, and if he was lying, calling now might provoke him. "I've been looking for you for a long time," he continued, his voice closer now. He must have resumed climbing while we spoke. "Did you really think a restraining order would stop me? That moving to another state would be enough? I always told you that we were meant to be together." I grabbed my satellite phone, the emergency backup we used when radio communications were down. As I punched in the direct number for the sheriff's department, I heard the distinctive sound of the metal rungs on the tower's ladder being used. He was climbing up. The satellite call connected, and I hurriedly explained the situation. They promised to dispatch units immediately, but the nearest help was at least 45 minutes away. My tower, like most fire lookouts, had a trapdoor entrance in the floor that could be locked from inside. I slammed it shut and secured the heavy bolt just as I heard him reach the platform below. "Lane, don't be like this," he called, his voice now directly beneath me. "I came all this way. I've been planning this reunion for months." The banging started. First he tried the trapdoor, rattling it violently against the bolt, and then he moved to the windows, testing each one. I backed into the corner with my bear spray in one hand and a flare gun in the other. For the next 30 minutes, he alternated between trying to break in and delivering long, rambling monologues about our relationship and the future that he still believed we would have together. His voice shifted between tender pleading and rage. "They'll never find your body out here," he hissed during one of his darker moments. I looked it up. "Do you know how many people go missing in national parks every year? They'll think that you've wandered off, got lost, maybe fell from your own tower, and then almost tenderly, but it doesn't have to be that way. We can still fix this. Just open the door, Lane." When the sheriff's helicopter spotlight finally illuminated the tower, the relief was so intense that I nearly collapsed. They found the trap-door bolt partially sawed through. He had been working on it methodically with a tool of some kind. In his backpack they found duct tape, zip ties, and a hunting knife, and printouts of my work schedule in the tower location. He had been planning this for a while. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had taken this lookout job partly because of him. Seeking isolation and distance after his stalking had my life in Colorado unbearable. And now that very isolation had nearly cost me my life. I finished the season with a deputy stationed at the base of my tower, and the following year I requested assignment to a different lookout in another forest. They never told Vince which one. Fire lookouts exist primarily to spot wildfires before they grow large enough to threaten lives and property. Most fires start out small, a tendril of smoke, a glowing spark, and we're trained to locate them precisely using specialized equipment. Early detection can mean the difference between a controllable burn and a catastrophic inferno. But in my 9th season, I encountered a fire that defied explanation. It began with a column of smoke rising from an area about 12 miles southeast of my tower. I pinpointed it using my Osborne firefinder, calling in the coordinates and watching as the initial attack crew was dispatched. Standard procedure executed countless times before. 4 hours later, the incident commander radioed with a puzzling report. "We've completed 3 sweeps of the target area. There's no sign of fire, smoke, or hotspots. Are you certain of your coordinates?" I rechecked my measurements. "Affirmative. Smoke column visible now at bearing 142 degrees, approximately 12.3 miles from the lookout. That's the exact area that we've been searching," he replied, confusion evident in his voice. "I'm standing there now and there's nothing here." I could see the crew's vehicles through my binoculars, tiny dots in the location that I had specified, and rising just beyond them, a distinct column of dark smoke. "The smoke is visible from my position directly beyond your current location," I insisted, continuing to rise and now approximately 200 feet high. What followed was increasingly tense radio communication as we tried to reconcile what I was seeing with what the ground crew was reporting. They sent up a drone with thermal imaging. Nothing. They spread out in a wider search pattern. Nothing. Yet the smoke column remained visible from my tower, growing larger by the hour. By evening, additional resources had been called in, including a helicopter with specialized detection equipment. They flew directly through where I reported seeing the smoke. Nothing. I was beginning to question my own sanity when the helicopter pilot radioed. "Lookout 1, We're getting some unusual electromagnetic readings from this location. No heat signature, no visible smoke from your position, but something's interfering with our instruments when we fly through the coordinates that you provided. That night, unable to sleep, I monitored the smoke through my night vision equipment. It had taken on an eerie bluish glow in the infrared spectrum, pulsing slightly in a way that felt deliberate. The next morning, a specialized team arrived from a government agency that the ranger's supervisor would only identify as a research division. They established a perimeter around the area and asked me to maintain communication blackout regarding my observations. For 3 days, they worked at the site while I watched from my tower. The smoke remained visible only to me and apparently whatever instruments they had brought. On the 4th day, it disappeared as suddenly as it had appeared. The research team packed up and left. No explanation was provided. When I pressed my supervisor, he simply said, "Some things around here don't have explanations, Lane. It's best to focus on the fires that we can fight." 2 weeks later, I received a visit from a woman who identified herself only as Dr. Marlowe. She showed credentials from a department that I didn't recognize and asked to review my logs from the incident. After reading through my detailed reports, she closed the logbook and fixed me with an intent gaze. "Have you observed any other anomalous smoke patterns during your tenure?" Something in her tone made me hesitate. "Define anomalous. Smoke that behaves contrary to natural wind patterns. Columns that appear and disappear rapidly. Colors that seem unusual." I thought carefully before responding. There had been other incidents over the years, brief, strange sightings that I had dismissed as tricks of the light or fatigue, but I had never logged them officially. "Nothing significant," I said finally. She studied me for a long moment and then handed me a card with just a phone number. "If you do observe anything unusual in the future, I would appreciate a direct call, day or night." Before leaving, she paused at the door. "You have an exceptional gift for observation. Your logs helped us tremendously, but sometimes for your own well-being, it might be better not to see everything." I never saw Dr. Marlowe again. The card she gave me is still tucked in my field guide, though I've never used it. Some questions are better left unasked, especially when you're alone in a tower with nothing but your thoughts in the vast wilderness below. My final season as a lookout brought the incident that ultimately led to my resignation. It began with radio interference, static and fragmented voices bleeding through on frequencies that should have been empty. At first I assumed it was ordinary atmospheric disruption or some equipment malfunction. I reported it to technical services and I continued with my duties. The interference grew worse over the following days. Fragments became more coherent, snippets of conversations at dispatches and what sounded like emergency calls. None of it matched the standard communications from our district. One night, unable to sleep due to a thunderstorm rolling through my sector, I noticed the radio activating on its own. Instead of static, a clear voice came through. "Require immediate assistance. Multiple casualties. Cannot contain the situation. Repeat, we cannot." The transmission cut off abruptly. I attempted to respond identifying myself and requesting clarification, but received only static in return. I logged the incident and reported it the next morning, providing the exact time and as much of the message as I could recall. The communications specialist seemed oddly unsurprised. "We've had similar reports from 3 other lookouts in the region," she admitted reluctantly. "It's always at night, always on the frequencies we don't use. We're working on a technical solution." But the transmissions continued, becoming more frequent and more disturbing. Some appeared to be standard emergency responses to fires or rescues, but with details that didn't match any incidents in our forest. Others contained technical jargon and code words that I did not recognize. The most unsettling pattern emerged about a week later. The transmissions began to reference specific coordinates within my observation area. I plotted them on my map and realized that they formed a rough circle around a remote section that contained nothing of note. No trails, no structures, not even any particular geographical features. Curiosity got the better of me. During my next supply delivery, I asked the ranger about the area. His reaction was immediate and strange. "That section is off limits for environmental recovery," he said too quickly. "Nothing there but some sensitive habitat restoration work." But there was something in his expression, a flicker of recognition, then concern, that told me he was lying. That night, the radio activated at precisely 2:57 a.m. The voice was different this time, a female professional, but with an undercurrent of urgency. "Containment breach in Sector 7. All personnel evacuate to minimum safe distance. Hazard protocols in effect. Repeat, containment breach." Static again. But this time when I looked down my east-facing window, I saw something that made my blood freeze. A faint blue glow pulsed from precisely the area indicated by those mysterious coordinates. Protocol demanded I report it immediately as a possible fire, but something stopped me. Perhaps the memory of the smoke incident from the previous year, or the ranger's strange reaction to my question. Instead, I used my personal camera to document the glow, which lasted approximately 8 minutes before fading away. The next morning, I carefully reviewed the images. The blue light appeared to emanate from the ground in a perfect circle, rising perhaps 50 feet into the air before dissipating. When I checked my map again, I noticed something that I had overlooked, a small notation that was barely visible on my Forest Service map. The claim name was simply listed as Project Riptide. That afternoon, I hiked to a ridge that would give me a better view of the area, though still keeping me several miles from the actual site. Through my binoculars, I could see no evidence of any environmental restoration work. What I did see, partially concealed by the natural terrain, was a chain-link fence topped with barbed wire and what appeared to be small camouflaged monitoring stations. I took more photos, increasingly uneasy about what I was documenting. That night, the radio transmissions changed in tone, multiple voices speaking rapidly and with clear alarm. Containment failing on levels 3 and 4, cannot verify status of Research Team 5, recommend immediate activation of the Tide protocol, and most disturbingly, be advised surface observations may be compromised, lookout towers in potential observation range. The blue glow appeared again stronger this time, pulsing in a rhythm that felt almost like a heartbeat. I made a decision. Using my satellite phone rather than the radio, I called the number that Dr. Marlowe had given me the past year. It was answered on the first ring. When I identified myself and began describing what I was witnessing, the voice on the other end cut me off. "Cease observation immediately. Close all blinds and power down all electronic equipment except this phone. A team is on its way to your location. Arrival in 40 minutes. Do not communicate with anybody else." I followed the instructions, my hands shaking as I pulled the blinds and shut down my equipment. The next 40 minutes were the longest of my life, sitting alone in the darkness, jumping at every creak and groan that the tower made in the wind. When they arrived, it wasn't by helicopter or vehicle, but on foot. A team of 6 individuals in unmarked tactical gear who simply appeared out of the darkness. They brought specialized equipment that they immediately began setting up around my tower, and Dr. Marlowe was among them. Her first words to me weren't an explanation, but a question instead. "Have you experienced any unusual symptoms? Headaches? Disorientation? A loss of time?" When I said no, the relief on her face was palpable. "Good. That's very good." What followed was a debriefing unlike anything that I had experienced. They reviewed my photos, notes, and recollections with intense interest. They asked questions about every transmission that I had heard, every observation that I had made up until that point. Finally, Dr. Marlowe sat across from me, her expression grave. What I'm about to tell you is very classified. You'll be asked to sign documents to that effect before we leave, but you deserve to know what you've witnessed." She confirmed that there was a research facility in the location that I had identified, established back in the 1950s to study something discovered in the surrounding area. She wouldn't specify what that something was, only that it had properties that defied conventional science. "The radio transmissions that you've been receiving," she explained carefully, "they're not coming from our facility, at least not from our facility now." I struggled to understand her meaning. "Then where are they coming from?" Her answer chilled me to my core. "Our working theory is that they're transmissions from the faculty at different points in time, past and possibly future incidents bleeding through due to the unique properties of what's being contained there." The blue light, she explained, indicated a fluctuation in those containment measures. My observation and documentation had provided them with valuable data that they couldn't get from their instruments alone. Human perception sometimes detects things that our technology misses. It's why lookout towers still exist when satellites could theoretically replace them. Before leaving, she offered me a choice: sign their confidentiality agreements and accept a reassignment to a different lookout tower far from this location, or resign from the service entirely with a generous separation package. Either way, she added, I don't recommend you return to this particular post. The effects of long-term exposure to these phenomena are not well understood. I chose to resign. The decision wasn't difficult. After a decade of watching the wilderness, I had seen too much, not just of the unexplained, but of human darkness as well. It was time to return to the world below, to streets and buildings and people. After leaving the lookout service, I tried to build back a normal life in Missoula. I took a job at the university library, rented a small apartment, and attempted to readjust to living among people rather than trees. For the most part, I did pretty well. The nightmares about my adventures and what I had witnessed had gradually faded away. I made some friends and even got back to dating a little bit. But 6 months after my resignation, the past came calling back. It was a Tuesday night in late March. I had just returned from work, juggling groceries and my keys at the door, when I noticed an envelope had been slipped under my door. No postmark, no address, just my name, handwritten on the front. Inside was a single sheet of paper containing a short, typewritten message in a small key. A matter has arisen concerning your former lookout tower that requires your attention. The enclosed key opened storage locker 17 at Westside Self-Storage on Brook Street. Inside, you'll find materials relevant to your interests. We recommend going alone. A colleague of Dr. M. My first instinct was to call the number that Dr. Marlowe had given me, but I hesitated. Whoever had delivered this note likely had connections to her organization. If they were communicating this way rather than directly, there might be a reason. Curiosity won out. I drove to the storage facility that evening, found Unit 17 and used the key. Inside was a single cardboard box containing a laptop computer, an envelope, and a sealed plastic case labeled Recorded Evidence, Beartooth Lookout, 2023-2024. The envelope contained a letter from Dr. Marlowe herself. Lane, if you're reading this, I've been able to contact you through official channels. After your departure, we continued monitoring the area near your lookout. What we discovered has raised concerns that I believe you should be aware of. The laptop contains footage from cameras that we installed around your tower after you left. The plastic case holds audio recordings from equipment designed to capture the kind of transmissions that you reported. I'm breaking protocol by sharing this with you, but I believe you've earned the right to know. More importantly, you may be the only person who can interpret what we found. Be careful who you trust with this information. Marlowe. I brought everything home, closed my blinds, and powered up the laptop. It required a password, and on a hunch, I tried Riptide. The screen unlocked. The laptop contained hundreds of video files organized by date. I started with the earliest, recorded just 1 week after my departure. The footage showed my former lookout tower from various angles, empty, waiting for the next season's occupant. Nothing unusual appeared in the first dozen files, just the tower standing there, buffeted by winter storms, occasionally visited by the wildlife. But in a file dated January 17th, something changed. The timestamp read at 2:57 in the morning, the exact time that I had received the most disturbing radio transmissions. The footage showed the tower exterior illuminated by the same blue glow that I had witnessed, but this time there was something else, a figure standing on the observation deck. The image was grainy, captured from a distance, but clear enough to send a chill through me. The figure appeared to be using the Osborne firefinder, moving it methodically, exactly as I would have done when scanning for smoke. Except the tower was supposed to be empty. The season had ended. Nobody should have been there. I fast-forwarded through the footage. The figure appeared again on multiple nights, always at that same time and always following the same pattern, scanning with the firefinder, making notes, and using the radio. A perfect mimicry of a lookout's duties. In the final video, dated just 1 week before I received the envelope, the camera angle shifted slightly, capturing the figure more clearly as it stood at the railing. My hands trembled as I paused the video and zoomed in. The figure was me, or somebody wearing my face. I moved to the audio files next. Most contained the same type of fragmented transmissions that I had heard during my final season. Urgent communications about containment breaches, casualty reports, evacuation orders. But one file recorded 3 days after the last video was different. A voice, my voice, speaking clearly without static or interruption. This is Lookout 1. I am observing multiple anomalies across all sectors. The breach has expanded beyond containment parameters. Timeline collapse imminent. To whoever receives this, I can see you watching. I can see what follows you. They are using your eyes. Close them while you still can. The file ended with a burst of static and what sounded like somebody screaming. I sat in my darkened apartment, staring at the screen, trying to process what I had seen and heard. The voice was unmistakably mine, yet I had no memory of ever speaking those words. The figure in the tower moved exactly as I would have moved and used the equipment exactly as I would have used it. At the bottom of the box, I found one final item that I had initially overlooked. A small, sealed envelope with, only if confirmed, written on it in Dr. Marlowe's handwriting. Inside was a brief note and a newspaper clipping. The clipping was an obituary dated 2 months in the future. My obituary. Cause of death: exposure after becoming lost on a hiking trail in the Clearwater National Forest. A trail that would take me near my former lookout tower. Dr. Marlowe's note was equally disturbing. Elaine, if you're reading this, you've confirmed what we feared. Our working theory. What we're containing isn't just affecting communications, it's creating temporal duplications. Echoes of people who spent significant time near the containment zone. The entity in your tower is not from the past. We believe it's you from a possible future, one that we hope to prevent. The enclosed clipping was discovered in the faculty archives in a file dated for 2026. We don't know how it got there. We don't know if this future is fixed or mutable. What we do know is this. Do not return to the forest under any circumstances. Do not attempt to contact your doppelganger. Most importantly, if you begin experiencing a loss of time or find yourself doing things you don't remember doing, call the emergency number below immediately. I'm sorry to have involved you further. I thought you deserved to know what might be coming for you. That was 3 weeks ago, and I've since moved to a different city, changed my name, and taken measures to ensure that I can't be easily located. I avoid looking out windows for too long. I've covered all the mirrors in my new apartment, and I've stopped using binoculars or telescopes of any kind. But sometimes, usually around 3 a.m., I wake with the certainty that somebody is watching me through eyes that are not quite their own, watching me from a vantage point high above, where the air is thin and the view stretches for hundreds of miles in every direction. Leon, not Cat Santos, Adrian Smudge, tiny smiling cat dragon slayer. 48, Die, Screaming, Nelson, Asada, Sanjay, Anthar, Dalamagara. Joey, Sleepy, Shroomy, Big Country. Alan, Miss Eldridge, Kathleen Maguire, and Kumasa Perennial, Justin Faulkner. Tachios, Awuna, Daikin, Goodology,